This episode of the Managing Madrid Podcast is brought to you by the Managing Madrid Podcast live in Toronto, Ontario, Canada on December 18th, 4 p.m. at the Flatiron Firkin Pub. The Managing Madrid Podcast is recording a live show in Toronto, and we're so excited to see familiar faces from our last show in Toronto and also meet some new ones. I know there are going to be people who are coming from other cities in Canada. So looking forward to meeting you guys. If you guys want to attend that party and meet other Madridistas, because I know I get a lot of messages like, hey Kiyan, anyone in Toronto, or I don't have anyone to watch the games with, who can I watch the games with? There are a ton of people to network with at that event. Meet them, form connections, and you'll never have to go another Real Madrid game with, watching it by yourself. So come meet a bunch of other Madridistas, come meet us, and hoping to get some special guests for that one as well. I have signed stuff from Modric and Figo and official La Liga swag, because they are also helping us organize the event. Link to book your spot in the show notes and early bird ticket prices and soon, so book ASAP. Coming up is the France versus Denmark post-game show with special emphasis on Tchouameni, but we basically break down the whole game. And if you want analysis on other Real Madrid players, to be quite honest, I don't even know how to really redirect you other than the fact that just be subscribed to everything, because we're recording podcasts every single day, and they're just podcasts every day. Some of them are on patreon.com/Managing Madrid. Some of them are free, which is the one you're listening to now. And if you want access to everything, just make sure you're subscribed to both podcasts and do that. All right, let's get started. Ray Hudson, Derek Ray going to kick us off, and let's go.
Nice article in the Managing Madrid blog. Wonderful lads that do a great job there, and worth reading about that man there. Karim Benzema needs to rest, and the numbers reveal why.
Times ended up almost looking like a 6-3-1. Some very good writing about that on the Managing Madrid website. First rate podcast as well. Of course, Fede Valverde was a huge part of the equation.
Hello and welcome to a Saturday edition of the Managing Madrid Podcast. I'm your host, Kiyan Sobhani, and I'm joined for the second time during this World Cup by Jose Perez, who is our resident France expert. He is covering France for us. He was assigned to cover Tchouameni and Camavinga and Karim Benzema, who is unfortunately watching this game at home now. But we're going to discuss all things Tchouameni mostly, and some France stuff in about 15-20 minutes or so. And then after that, Argentina versus Mexico starts. So that's our timeline right now. So Jose, welcome to the show. How you doing?
Hello, Kiyan, and hello, everyone. Nice to be talking about France. If there's something I did not expect going into this World Cup, is that I was actually going to see an entertaining France midfield. They were missing a lot, like they were missing Kante and Pogba. Looking at the squad, the midfield selection looked thin. So it wasn't clear that area of the pitch was going to be fun. And then now we've come up with this Deschamps invention of Griezmann as an 8. Rabiot is actually playing pretty well. So it looks actually, and then of course Tchouameni helps balance the whole thing out. So it's actually a really well balanced and fluid midfield unit. It looks quite nice.
I feel like two players have benefited from Kante and Pogba not being here. I mean, Tchouameni would have started regardless. So,
yes,
I think he would have played, and he would have probably done well alongside any of these midfielders. It's opened up a door for Rabiot to prove that he's still a good footballer, and I think he's been so far so good in these two games. And as you and I have discussed about Griezmann in the first game against Australia, one thing that I think Pogba is really good with France specifically is his long-range passing and his ability to just, there's so many balls that France can exploit over the top of the defensive line with those runs that Mbappe and Dembele make, and Griezmann has taken on that role. So it's worked so far. 2 games, they're officially qualified now out of the group stages, and so far so good. So I'm not sure exactly what that means for the big games and the knockout stages and all that stuff, but so far so good. So why don't we focus on Tchouameni first, Jose? Did you see any difference in terms of his role today against Denmark versus the one he had against Australia?
So the main things is that I feel like this midfield trio, like it's looking more like a proper, especially in this game, it looked more like a proper midfield trio with Tchouameni as single pivot.
Right.
I think last time it was looking a bit more double pivoty. Now it looks like more proper, like a Tchouameni single pivot. That's the main difference. I noticed that other things still there. Like there's a lot of mid movement and rotation in that midfield. So with Griezmann and Rabiot, you sometimes see them switch sides. Sometimes you'll see Griezmann on the left, sometimes on the right. And even there are sometimes situations when they go up pressing, Tchouameni goes forward along with Griezmann and Rabiot stays back. But that it's just like a very situational thing. So it looks differences with last game is that, yes, for Tchouameni at least, I think it looks more single pivot, and the midfield just keeps looking more and more fluid. Like those three are really starting to find their groove.
That's like the first thing I noticed by halftime of this game was that if there was a different role for Tchouameni in this game, is that I felt like the single pivot was more defined. On paper, it's a double pivot. If you look at the heat maps, it kind of resembles a double pivot. But off the ball, structurally, when France were playing defense, Tchouameni was just right behind the midfield and in front of the defensive line, and Rabiot and Griezmann were kind of in front of him in a 4-3-3. And I noticed that was a little bit different than what France had aligned versus Australia. And I thought Tchouameni was good again. I mean, him and Rabiot, their distribution was very good. I thought Tchouameni, his step-up interventions were good. I thought his positioning was good. And like an extremely indirectly way also involved in the goals. I mean, you have to be a huge Tchouameni fan, which we are, if you want to credit him with the first goal. But, he did play the initial outlet pass to Mbappe, and then that led to the whole brilliant 1-2 with Theo. Correct me if I'm wrong, was before Griezmann crossed it for the second goal, was it him who was on that far side, or was it somebody else? Was it Dembele?
I'm trying to, I remember that he had a role in that move for the second goal, but I don't remember exactly what was the role.
Yeah. So either way, we're really kind of pushing the Tchouameni agenda hard if we're going to say he's involved in goals.
But he is still he still always has it's just one of those things where he just has a prominent role, in those possessions that ends up in shots. And sometimes he ends up generating the shots directly, that really neat Griezmann chance that came from a long ball from him going in behind the Danish defense. So I thought that today, especially in the one thing that I've been noticing about Tchouameni is that at least with France right now, there are times where he looks like a bit more conservative on the ball. He can do more, but he doesn't quite go for it. And both in the second half of last game and especially in this second half, I started seeing a looser version of him, more willing to go for those riskier passes. And that's nice.
What I do also like, and I hope this eventually at least results in one goal this World Cup, is that when France start to get into the final third, there's always a pocket open for him to arrive at the top of the box to hit a rebound or a shot at the top of the box. And he had, I think, at least one in this game which got blocked. But you can see that he can pop up in that zone. And teams have a difficult time defending that because he's coming from the anchor role and no one's really picking him up, right? He's just kind of floating in, provides numerical superiority in that situation. I hope that can result in at least one goal. I'm curious to get also more broad France thoughts from you. When Denmark equalized, for example, I was like, oh, that kind of felt like it came out of nowhere. Great for Denmark for pulling that through, but I was like, am I being deceived? Is this an even game? And it was because to me, France was just dominating. Maybe that they kind of were a little bit lax and let their guard down for the equalizer, but overall they were just so dominant in this game from start to finish. And then I looked at the numbers and was like, it's backed up. What were your just overall France takeaways from this game?
I am I am mightily impressed. Like this is because this was, and the way both teams played it, with the kind of tension that both teams played it, this was like a knockout round level tie. Like they played it with that kind of tension, and like this Denmark is not an easy opponent. So this was kind of a 5-4-1 block that's pretty difficult to break down. And I think, of course, it's easier to break down when you have Mbappe and Dembele on both, and Dembele playing well, by the way, on both sides, attacking the opponent. But I think they did a really good job moving the ball around. So I think it was a really, really strong performance in possession. Of course, their attackers seem to be doing well. Dembele had a great game. Mbappe sometimes struggled a bit more on the left, but then it doesn't matter because he scores the 2 goals anyways. And I think in defense, they actually, like, first half, they just snuffed out everything that Denmark threw, like whatever Denmark could throw at them. Then of course, in the second half, it's not the first time that France struggles with these Danish set pieces. I mean, for example, that goal, I'm still trying to wonder, like, if that first header, like, if he wanted to put it in the goal, or it was planned to, like, send it back, whatever. Because I just had a feeling that it could have been planned. But whatever the case, France has been struggling a lot with those Danish set pieces. I mean, they lost their 2 games against Denmark in the Nations League. So it's not the first time that happens to them. And then afterwards, like, I think Denmark had a period where they were really starting to create, they were really starting to find some holes in that French defense. But I thought France's defense was pretty good. One thing that's really interesting is that they play kind of a 4-3-3 in possession, but then once they have to defend, it looks more like a 4-4-2, because what happens is that Dembele actually tracks back, and then Rabiot defends the left wing and lets Mbappe just be freely with the striker, with Giroud up front. So it's just a setup so that Mbappe doesn't have to defend as much, and is just ready to get the ball and go on the counter. So I think they have a pretty good and solid setup from what I saw here. And Denmark, they had that period where they created some good chances, but they did a pretty good job containing Denmark.
France have kind of that Brazil element where both wings are so devastating. Like, they just have line breakers and a lot of speed and really great dribblers, just people who can do damage. And then plus a playmaker like Griezmann and good defense in transition. And there's a huge what if surrounding the Lucas Hernandez injury, to me, like in the first game, because this Theo is just a different kind of beast. I mean, Lucas Hernandez is a good player, solid player. But Theo has just that offensive ceiling, and he also played good defense today. I thought his tracking was good on runners.
Yeah.
But I mean, I tweeted it, and then I retweeted it when the first goal happened, and I don't know how many times I'll have to retweet it or make the same comment. But the Theo Mbappe 1-2 on the left is just impossible to
devastating.
Defend. It's so hard to defend. Yeah, like and then the goal was a result of that.
Yeah, and it's just one of those. I absolutely love those cutbacks. The one that it's like the same player goes, passes it out to the overlapping guy, then the overlapping guy gives it back, and then you score. Like, it's one of those. For example, Messi and Jordi Alba did a lot of those in Barcelona, and those were amazing plays. It reminded me a bit of those, although this one was under even tighter spacing. It's quite a devastating combination. It is kind of funny that, in a way, Deschamps like kind of stumbled into this solution because it wasn't the original plan. But of course, it elevates the ceiling of what France can do in the offense, because of course Mbappe is already dangerous enough on his own. Then you add a world-class attacking left back, and it's the kind of argument that, like, with that and a solid defense, that's an argument that can win you tournaments. Because, I mean, I like Dembele, but Dembele, it's a bit like flipping a coin. He had a great game today. He might not have it next time. But you know that Theo and Mbappe are going to be generating stuff game in, game, like every single game.
Well, I think with the thing with Dembele, too, is that I go into every game watching him, expecting him to make mistakes and lose the ball. But I also expect him to do a lot of good that comes with it. And it's kind of like he's kind of that player who has a high volume of risk-taking. And sometimes it looks great, sometimes it looks really bad. But overall, I think the cost-benefit analysis is usually positive with him.
Yes.
Because he's just so hard to defend, and he's unpredictable. And he was really great. And you mentioned it on
Yeah.
Twitter, too. Like, his pinpoint crosses with, like, when he cuts
Both
in from the
legs.
right and both feet. Yeah, I mean, he put in
It's
some great crosses. The weight and the dip on them, it's really impressive.
Like, that's what makes, like, really, like, one of the core things of Dembele as a player is that two-footedness, because that makes him so good it makes him good as a dribbler and as an assist provider, because as a dribbler, you don't know what side he's going to go on, because he doesn't really have a preferred foot. You don't know, and he can get in a good assist with either foot. So it's just an incredibly hard player to defend. So all in all, this France team is set up really nice, and it's nice how Tchouameni acts as the element that's, like, of course, right now he doesn't look as the standout of the team, but it's really the element that provides a lot of balance to this side. So that's always important. The only time today where maybe he was being a bit overrun, just like the rest of the French defense, is in that wave of Danish attacks that came after the goal, where, like, the whole defense kind of struggled to get back on time and defend the box well. So sometimes he was a bit late to those things, but that's about it. But that's more of a system-wide issue rather than a Tchouameni issue. And just overall, I think that still the French defense is looking quite solid right now. So it's looking good.
Yeah, and the team overall is deep in pretty much every position. Left back, obviously. What are your thoughts on Deschamps' experimentation of Camavinga in training at left back?
Disappointed it's not Rabiot. I wouldn't have been surprised, but just no. But and also, like, I thought for a while, it's like, just put Theo in there. Like, what's the problem? I guess that's I guess it's gonna be an emergency solution. Like,
but even then, you would think they'd put Koundé ahead of Camavinga or something. Like, they'd put Koundé on the left, like.
True.
In that scenario, or just someone in the defensive line that plays as a makeshift left back rather than Camavinga, who's never played there in his life.
Yeah, I think that's true. Like, Koundé as a makeshift option would make more sense than
would
Camavinga.
It annoy you, or would it please you if Camavinga just started left back and then all of a sudden was like basically Roberto Carlos, and then Ancelotti made him a left back too, and then everything just changed? Would it annoy you, or you'd be happy with that?
So on one side, it would annoy me because it's like, come on, just play the guy in midfield. But on the other side, at least from France's perspective, at this point, I'm like, whatever gets Camavinga more minutes in this, whatever gets Camavinga a bit more minutes in this,
put him striker, whatever. I just want to see him on the field. I hope,
yes.
I mean, now with France qualified, you hope that he'll be able to. You and I had said if there's a path for him to become a prominent player in this World Cup, it's he gets minutes in the third game, impresses, and then works his way into the rotation.
Yes.
For the knockout games, hopefully.
So so let's hope that happens, because right now I'm not very optimistic about Camavinga getting minutes. Tchouameni is doing pretty much as expected, so it's he's really the guy who provides a lot of structure and balance to this side. He, again, just like, the thing about Tchouameni and what I love about him is that his day-to-day performance level, just like it's a guy who really doesn't have a bad game. Like, day-to-day, he is extremely reliable, and it's a player that, sure, maybe he doesn't drop like a 10 out of 10 every time, but he will drop like a 7 out of 10 almost every week, and that is so valuable, especially for a player who plays like as a pivot. Like, it's just the kind of player you can build a side around.
And bringing it back full circle, 81 touches, 98.5% passing accuracy. I think it took him a while to actually misplace a pass, because in the first half he didn't misplace any. 2 key passes, 4 tackles. Also, just looking at these numbers, Theo had team high 87 touches, 5 key passes, 1 assist. Theo was amazing today.
Yeah.
It's a fun team. Would you say where would you rank them in terms of the teams that have impressed you the most in this World Cup?
Right now, of course, from the title candidates, the most I still think I'd still rate Brazil and them over Spain at the moment, simply just because they look like a more solid defensive unit than Spain. So I'd say up to now, probably Brazil and France are the ones that have impressed me the most, followed by Spain, simply because I think both Brazil and France have had to deal with two European teams, Denmark and Serbia, that were actually pretty tough cookies. Like, just those were games that you could definitely, with the kind of tension that you could definitely find in a knockout round. And I think they went past that. They went past both opponents like pretty solid way without conceding much. So that's looking really good. We'll see. Of course, we might put Spain on that tier depending on what they do against Germany, which is going to be some challenge. Of course, if Spain passes that test, then we're starting to talk about like the group of like maybe the three most serious title candidates. We'll see.
The games, I mean, not to say the games in the first round of play or the first set of games weren't interesting and exciting, but now it's like it gets really interesting. I mean, tomorrow, Croatia, Canada is going to be fascinating. Germany, Spain's going to be fascinating. That last group stage game, there's a ton of amazing games. Iran versus USA. Uruguay, Portugal. I think Uruguay, Portugal is the next game. But anyway, either way, the World Cup's just getting really fun now.
Even now, this Argentina game, I mean, if they mess this one up, they're out. They're almost out. So
if they lose, I mean, I don't think my personal and I'd like to ask you your prediction, because people are going to listen to this probably after the Argentina game finishes. So we can make predictions that will age horribly or age spectacularly if you want. My hunch, I guess, is Argentina will raise their game and will be sharper, and maybe Saudi Arabia caught them off guard that first game, and Argentina will raise the call. That's my prediction. But I don't know. Messi versus Ochoa, like unstoppable force versus immovable object.
We'll see. I'm also expecting a pretty, like, giving the pressure what happened before, I'm expecting a pretty solid Argentina performance. And I'm also, to be honest, this is the Mexican team I have less hype about in a long time. Yeah. So I'm just not that confident on their ability to pull it off.
Yeah, same. That's how I feel too. But I don't know. I'm ready for anything at this point.
We'll see. We'll see how the predictions go.
We'll see. We'll definitely be watching that. It starts in about 9 minutes. So I'm going to let you go, Jose. We each have a few minutes to grab a drink or a snack before the game starts. And thanks for tuning in. Thanks for your amazing coverage of France. It's great work. You can read Jose's work on the website. You can follow him on Twitter. It's in the show notes. And we'll be back tomorrow, I think, to talk about Modric and Rudiger.
Yeah, it's going to be a pretty active day.
Yeah, it's going to be very active. All right. Thanks, guys, for listening. Thanks. All right. I appreciate you. Take care.
Thanks, Kiyan. Thanks, everyone.
Thanks for listening, guys. I appreciate you guys tuning in. Before we let you go, we wanted to give a shout out to our patrons over on patreon.com/Managing Madrid. And a specific shout out to our $10 plus patrons, because if you pledge $10 or more, you get a specific shout out on the podcast, in addition to getting guaranteed responses to your questions. So shout out to the following $10 plus patrons: Brandon Alvarez, Willie Reed, Will Sousa, Wei Pering, Wamik Jamal, Tobias Arroyo Botcher, Tarek Goktas, Talib Salhab, Tahmid Kalam, Sujai Wani, Somanchu Singh, Sheikh Atiri, Shamil Shabaz Sharapov, Sergio Arispe, Santos Solorzano, Samuli Justin, Samer Z, Said Mahad, Sai Mohan Sasi Kumar, Rodrigo Balmaceda, Rishi D, Phoenix, Peter Powell, Paulo Fierro, Patrick Udayafati, Oscar Barrera, Nico Laxo. Hi. And you get a shout out from my son Arlo, who has just walked in the room as well. Bye, I love you. Shout out to Nicholas Moeller, Nick Ribeiro, Mowgli, MJ Diego, Michael Zinberg, Marin Myrtle, Matthew Atkins, Martin Ridman, Magnus Lext, Logan Stahl, Leon Stavronakis, Kunal Tilakar, Crystal Glass, Kevin Rivera, Jose Cruz, John Fernandez, Jason Fitz, Ian Marley, Graham Gerard, Gary Kohut, Frederick Rantakiro, Frederick Sundros, Faisal Hamdan, S.A. Davisito, Eloy Enriquez, Edward Sossman, Daniel Williams, Con P, Christian Toft, Christian Acosta, Charles Williams, Brendan Powers, Brandon Stevens, Ashik Bashar, Arnab Mukherjee, Arman Gashi, Armando L, Antons Rudenko, Anirudh Singh, Ananya Kumar, Al, Azaz Hussein, Adrian Rios, Adar Zalikovic, Adam Dorsey, Bella Chow, Varun, Ramtin Maghrur, Fabian Moreno, and Daniel Smith. We love you guys so much. Thank you for being a part of this journey with us, and Hala Madrid.